Morning, everyone. This is Dwayne Theobald coming to you for Colloquy number 2. What I'm interested in talking about with this colloquy is the notion of fatherhood, particularly in Kwame Alexander's The Crossover. Before I get to that text, though, I do want to talk and give a few brief thoughts about the other texts and how fatherhood is kind of incorporated in them. In all three of these texts, a father is present. A father does exist for all of these children. In Between Shades of Grey, of course, Lena has a father. He's taken captive and taken as prisoner, just like Lena, her mother, and Jonas are. The only thing we really have to go on with Lena's father is, one, their conversation early on in the text where he tells her to have courage, be of good cheer, take care of your family, take care of your mother and your brother, etc. And we really don't get anything else. We don't get any actual interaction with the father other than through flashbacks and through Lena's memories and kind of what she desires. And then, of course, with Lexi's text, of course, Junior has a father. Again, he is very present. He's there in his life every day, but the problem is that he's an alcoholic. So he's very problematic. Definitely not someone that Junior seems to really want to look up to. He actually finds and takes issue with the fact that his father is a drunk and that many of the other Native Americans on the reservation are drunks. So what I'm interested in talking about with the crossover, why I chose this notion of fatherhood more than any, is because, Josh and JB have a father. Again, Chuck is very present in their lives. He's there cheering them on constantly. But what I find interesting is that you have the character of Chuck who knows he sees what his sons are interested in, and he wants to, help them with that interest. Because, of course, he has background in basketball. That was what he did. He did it professionally. It was really something that he enjoyed. But he tends to kind of force his opinions and force himself on what they want to do a little too much. I actually have a couple areas in the text I do want to discuss briefly. The first one being on page 6 and 7, when Chuck gives Josh the nickname Filthy McNasty. Of course, these 2 pages here kind of center around the two of them sitting and listening to jazz records. And as a teenager, a lot of teenagers aren't interested in jazz music. It's just not really their thing. But Chuck pulls it out and he's telling Josh, listen to all these great artists. They're really, really good. They're really interesting. And on page 6, Chuck starts out by saying, Josh, this cat is the real deal. Listen to that piano, fast and free, just like you and JB on the court. Of course, connecting the music to what they do on the court. And then Josh says, it's okay, I guess, Dad. Okay, did you say okay? Boy, you better recognize greatness when you hear it. And, of course, Chuck continues on kind of describing some of the music again. And then, of course, on page 7, Chuck telling his son, I'm dedicating this song to you. What's the next song? Only the best song, the funkiest song on Silver's Paris Blues album, Filthy McNasty. So that's, of course, where the nickname comes from. And what I find interesting there is, of course, Chuck is, again, kind of forcing his interest onto his son, and that's how we get the nickname. Now, if you go to page 10, when Josh is actually kind of describing his persona, Filthy McNasty, it starts off by saying, Filthy McNasty is a mythical man-child. And I'm going to stop right there, because the mythical man-child really interests me. It's the notion that, mythical being something that not necessarily real, it is myth, it is kind of folklore. And, of course, the notion of a man-child, someone who is not fully man, and that there is some kind of childlike, immature tendencies linked in there. And, of course, I find it interesting that he would just, Josh would describe it this way because the way Chuck behaves and the kind of the way he demonstrates his notion of fatherhood to his sons is kind of childlike and very immature at times. Another example of, the problematic fatherhood of Chuck and kind of the way he behaves really kind of happens throughout the text. As I mentioned before, Chuck is very enthusiastic and wants to see his sons succeed and do really well. But the problem is that he forces those opinions a little too much. Throughout the text, we see him at basketball games cheering his sons on, really excited, and he wants to see them do well. But he does it in a little too forceful way. At one point, he actually, I believe, gets up in a ref's face. On page 16, it starts out saying, Mom tells Dad that he has to sit on the top row of the bleachers during the game. You're too confrontational, she says. So automatically, already you have the mother who knows her husband very well and says, look, you need to separate yourself from everybody else. You're a little too loud. You get up in people's faces a little too much. You're too confrontational. Which, of course, you want to, as a parent, you, of course, want to be very active in your child's lives, but you don't want to overstep your bounds. And he tends to be doing that a lot. And, of course, we find out later on page 47, when JB and Josh are kind of rummaging through their father's closet, they find some interesting information. It starts on page 47. We open it. There are 2 letters. The first letter reads, Chuck Bell, The Los Angeles Lakers would like to invite you to our free agent tryouts. We open the other. It starts. Your decision not to have the surgery means that realistically, with patella and tendonitis, you may not be able to play again. So, again, here, this pretty much gives us indication as to why Chuck is so, as a father, he's pushing this notion of being a great basketball player, being the best, and being the man, being filthy McNasty onto Josh, and of course also pressuring JB as well. You know, he had the opportunity to try out for the Los Angeles Lakers, which is a really, really big deal after having played internationally. But because he chose not to have surgery and repair his body and get better so he could potentially play basketball, you know, and again, we learned that's because of his distrust of doctors, because of what happened with his father, etc. He, of course, isn't able to do that. So I think, in a way, he sees what he's doing with his sons as a way to live vicariously through them and to get them to be where they should be in the sport. And so he can be proud of them and also feel an accomplishment for himself that he helped get them there. And, of course, you know, with Chuck's character as a whole, everything kind of comes to a head on page 210 and 211. When he's in the hospital, he just had the heart attack. Again, his distrust of doctors led him not to go to the doctor because of some of his health issues that his wife bugged him about constantly throughout the text. So he's in the hospital at this point. And this is the, at least for me, the infamous questions chapter, questions section, where the two of them are having a conversation. Josh and Chuck are having a conversation through questions. They're just kind of asking each other questions. It starts out, of course, with Chuck asking the questions we're all very used to. Did you, have you been practicing? Have you been doing this? Have you been doing that? Whatever. And of course, it ends with Josh getting very serious and Chuck getting very serious by saying, don't you see that I'm in here so they can fix the damage that's been done to my heart? And of course, Josh says, who's going to fix the damage that's been done to mine? And of course, that last line, who's going to fix the damage that's been done to mine, could be very indicative of several things. One, of course, the fact that Josh is traumatized by his father, the man that he should ideally be looking up to, even though he's problematic, seeing him in the hospital, but also, who's going to fix the damage that's been done to mine over the course of my life, all the things you've kind of forced on me, all the influence you've had? Who's going to help me? Who's going to fix me? Who's going to help me become the man I should be? Because I would argue that Chuck, even though he's the father, he hasn't done a great job of really being there for his sons and giving them the kind of support they really need. Yes, he encourages them to play basketball, but there's more to being a father than just encouraging your sons to do something that they're interested in, and of course trying to further your own agenda as well and your own ideas. So that's it for this video. I'll pick up on the next one. Thanks.